Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Xav Show. We are back with episode 2. Yes, it's only the second episode. I know it's been like 3 weeks or something like that. It's been a month. It's been a month because the first episode was released on what's it called? Like the last Friday of June, and now it is the first Friday of August. So I'll let you take a moment to sink that in. Today, we're going to be discussing the true history and the era that is currently known in my discography as love. It's definitely a long story that is very complicated for no good reason, supposedly. But we'll get there. Let's cut to the intro. The story of love is very interesting to me because it starts all the way back in that of 2020. We'll get into that in just a second. But before anything else, I do need to say this about love. It has been a weird project from the beginning because from day one, it was meant to be my debut album. I know, it sounds weird. This album that is currently my third in my entire discography was originally going to be my first. We'll get there. We're gonna get there in like bits. I'm gonna do this in chapters. This is gonna be a whole process, okay? So you're gonna have to bear with me and stick throughout the episode. So let's rewind and start from the beginning, like I said, back in 2020. So to begin this next chapter, I have to tell you about my timeline, otherwise none of this will really make sense to start. It's kind of a thing where I planned out all of my albums from the beginning, and it was more so like a roadmap of things that I wanted to achieve or things that I wanted to do in my career, like albums I wanted to release, tours I wanted to go on, awards that I wanted to win, stuff like that, And in this original plan, the discography goes as how it ended up in reality. Musik One, Musik Two, and then Love. But when I first started working on music back in 2020, I was originally intending to release Love as my first album. Well, not intentionally, it was just what I was working on at the time. And to continue, we have to do more time skips. And for simplification reasons, I'm going to refer to this next period of time as the first love sessions. Okay? You'll understand in a moment. Now, back in 2020, when I first started working on music, I had wrote a couple of songs, maybe 3 or 4 of them that in practice never got past the demo stage, but it was my first endeavor into making music and learning and songwriting, really. And that's how I learned that I was a pretty good songwriter. And now we have to jump to 2021, and this is when I really started to make music, with producing songs anyway. And because that was around the time when I figured out that I wanted to do music professionally. The original theme of the Love album when I first made it was originally going to be based on early 2010s pop music, I don't know why, so don't ask me, but it's just what I wanted to do at the time, I guess, so. And for the first time that I started working on the Love project itself was in 2022. And later down the line, that's when, around the time when I started to record music, obviously. And it was early 2022, probably like April. I forget when spring break was back then, but that's the break I was on when I recorded the album. I was at my grandmother's, at the time, her new house. And I was there for just a couple of days during spring break. And I was just at this dining table in the living room. And for many hours a day, I would just sit there and write songs, produce them, then record them. And it just kept going in that same process until I eventually finished 8 songs. And that's when I considered the project to be done. And looking back on it now, I'm very surprised that I was able to finish it in just a couple of days. It wasn't even like a week or something. It was just a couple of days, literally. And it's just interesting. After all has been said and done, it's just like it wasn't the best of the work that I've done, but it was good enough for me at the time. I was happy with it. I liked it. So it was done. And at the time, I was dying to release it. I was like, this is amazing. I love this so much. It needs to go out on the street right now. And yep, my mother was like, you're too young. Give it a little bit of time and we'll get there. And that was basically the end of that right there. And so the project was ultimately scrapped. And after that, like a couple weeks or maybe a month or two after that whole thing went down, that's when I started to work on Musik One. So after the original Love project was scrapped and I started working on Musik One, that's when I fell back into the original timeline that I was telling you about earlier. And here's a little fun fact, actually. Musik One, when I started working on it, it was supposed to be called Takeoff. That was the original name for it. Not in the timeline or anything, that's just what I wanted to call it, and its code name, I guess, would be Musik One. But after some of the songs, and one of them being the title track, Takeoff, the song itself, when they didn't make the final cut, the album's name was officially changed to what you know it now as, Musik One. And then of course, we get down to Musik Two, and then after that, we come all the way back around to Love. And I started working on the final version that is currently on streaming platforms just shortly after Musik Two was released. I want to say maybe like a week or two after that album came out, and I was done with like the promotional cycle for it. And it wasn't like I immediately started recording or writing or producing or anything. I was just coming up with the general concepts, like what the album was gonna sound like, what it was gonna be like, what the artworks were going to be like, just coming up with basically the image that I was going to go for the era, and I was still even deciding at the time whether I wanted to do a love project anymore, if I wanted to do something different, because with Musik Two, that's when I started to write emotionally, like with my heart and not just my mind. And so I was like, I want to take this deeper, not just go back to like surface level content like love, for example, but eventually I did end up coming back around to the love thematic world, to show that I recovered from the events of Musik Two. And when I first started writing songs for it, it was going to be something completely different than what you hear on the final version of the album. It was going to be based off of Two and many other albums that I was listening to at the time, like Troye Sivan's Something to Give Each Other and Beyoncé's Renaissance, among many other albums. But those were like the two main influences in the style that I was originally intending to achieve with the project, you know? But after a while, I started to reach certain territories where I was not ready to go yet. So I did a 180, and then I fell back into my comfort zone. Then after that is when I had the idea, like, of doing love, obviously, as the main theme of the album, but doing four parts. The main album, then a second part, a third part, a fourth part, maybe even a fifth part at the very end to just like sum it all up. That was the original plan that I had going for it, because I wanted to encompass not just the traditional types of love that everyone talks about and knows the word for, but all the different kinds of them that there are, you know? And that concept is something that I talked about in the love memoir that was released like a day before the album came out.
As we all know about the birds and the bees, and when a man and a woman love each other very much, and this is like the basic meaning of love that we've all been taught throughout our childhood. But what if I told you that that's not all?
It was just a concept that I talked about because that plan was still in motion at the time, but unfortunately, it just never happened. And we'll get to that in a moment. So now we are at what I'll refer to as the second love sessions. And these sessions were for what would become the final album. There's no third, no fourth sessions. It's just the first love sessions and the second love sessions, you know? And it was a process. It was definitely a time period. And it was a real process for the longest of time, because after I scrapped the disco / electronic dance music idea theme that I was originally going for, it was just around like the time of August 2023, something like that. It didn't last very long. It was only like maybe 2 or 3 months. And once that idea was scrapped, that was 23 songs that were all in various demo stages that were all just gone, just like that. And after that point, I had a severe case of writer's block. And this writer's block lasted a very long time. I could not come up with anything to write. I was just making music, but I could not write anything to go with it. Like, I was in a stuck box. Like, I didn't know what to do, you know? And when it first hit, I was like, okay, well, this is gonna be fine. It'll only last like a couple hours or like a day or something. And then I'll come back to it and I'll be right fine, just like before. That never happened. And I just kept thinking this again and again until eventually I was like, I need to listen to something. I need outreach. I need something. And that's when I happened to find the first Love Session recordings again. I had completely forgotten about it by that point. I was just like out of my mind. I just wasn't thinking about it. And then I just happened to be scrolling through my iCloud Drive and I saw it. And I was like, this might be something. And I listened to all 8 songs. And it was a hard listen, by the way. Just want to make that clear. But I only ended up reworking like 5 or 6 of the songs. It wasn't all 8 that I reworked or even thought about using. It was just 5 or 6, I'm not sure, but only 4 of the ones that I reworked ended up on the final cut of the album. When I went back to rework these songs, I found that the songwriting still held up by my own standards, at least, and especially for songs like Love. I just need one more chance, and I'll show you how much I love you. The title track, the song called Love, at the very end of the album, I barely changed any of the lyrics in that song. Barely changed any of them. Barely, because it was just such a good a good song that I wrote that I didn't feel like I needed to change much about it, you know? Now this next chapter is where everything really just kind of like takes off, you know? It just and then crash lands like a couple months after that. But let's talk about it. Now the reworking process was weird when I first started it because it was my first time doing this kind of work to my music or to any music really, and it ended up becoming a simple, fun, and easy process. But when I first started, I was like, what am I doing? What do I even have to do? Like, what can I do? Aside from re-record the vocals, what else can I do? Because the structure of these songs already depends on what exists already. It's not like I can just change everything and keep the same flow of the song and the same lyrics. It doesn't really work, you know? And this is also around the time when my new voice started coming in. This was around the time when my voice started deepening, like seriously, and it was just weird. Like I would have spikes where my voice was like, ah! And then other times I would have voices where my voice was like, oh, and then I couldn't get up there. But the first song that I reworked and finished entirely was Who I Am. Yes, I know, it's interesting. When I really think about it now, it's very interesting that I wrote that song so many like years before it was actually released, and it still was accurate to things and how I felt really. And this also happened to be around the time when I finally convinced my mother to let me release my music on Spotify. Yes, it happened very late. It happened in 2023, and Who I Am was the first song that I released to streaming services. And I was completely over the moon, you know? This song became a staple for me. And it was because I had this mentality about it, and I was like, this is gonna be the lead single for this new album, and it's going to be the start of a new era. It's going to be the start of something completely different for me. And it was like there's no if, buts, maybes about it. This song is going out today.
I'm tired of it, and I've had enough of it. And I really need a break, not to explain. This is who I am, and I don't care about you. You can't change me if you try.
And so, when it finally came out on September 16th, 2023, it ended up becoming my biggest song to date. Among the other songs from the first Love sessions that ended up on the final version, there is Kiss and Tell Booth, I'm in Love with You, and Love.
Hello, everybody. I want to quickly thank you so much for watching this episode, but that is going to be the end for this episode. Yeah. This episode is going on for a little bit too long, and I know the story is interesting, so if you guys want to see more, make sure you come back next week for part 2 to the history behind love. Alright, thank you so much. Bye. I'll cut to the credits.